if you have identified that your manuscript is going to be an original research manuscript, the next thing that follows is the format, the components, the different components that make up that research. And so I'm going to be using original research articles as an example because, like I said earlier, this is what the majority of us will be doing when we are going to be writing our manuscripts. The first thing is the title. And in some manuscripts, in some target journals, they tell you there is a long title and a short title. And if that is the case, you indicate it, and they would usually tell you the word count or character count. So if you are told that the long title is 20 words, do not exceed it. And if it's indicated that the short title should be 10 words, do not exceed it, because those things are strictly followed by the reviewers and even the editorial team as well. And that is usually the first component of a manuscript, original research manuscript. And the next is list of authors, where you're going to have listing of all of the authors, everyone who has contributed to that study and has met the criteria set for inclusion as an author. If that criteria is not met, you do not want to include persons who do not meet the criteria. What you can do is that for such contributors that fall short of the criteria, you can list them in the acknowledgement section. And usually the author guidelines will indicate that and make it clear how that should be done. And usually if you see that in the author guideline, they will refer you to other articles or other written pieces that will tell you what these criteria are. And usually for manuscripts, it's indicated, you usually have a way to indicate who is the corresponding author with an asterisk. Usually there is first author, second author, third author, up to the last author. The first author oftentimes is the corresponding author. The corresponding author is the one who submits the manuscript and is the one who's going to be interfacing between the journal and the authors. Like I said, most times the first author is the corresponding author. However, there are instances in which the corresponding author is different from the first author. And if that is the case, the guidelines will indicate that you use an asterisk to indicate the name of that corresponding author. So if author number 3 is the corresponding author, and that author is Dr. Gunnar Nwankwo, an asterisk is put at the end of Gunnar Nwankwo. And then at the bottom of that title page, that asterisk is also indicated. The name is written and the email is written, and then the address or perhaps the ORCID number, as the case may be. All of those details are provided in the author guidelines. And also, the expectation is that you can use numbers, oftentimes superscript numbers, to indicate, for instance, author number 1, there's a superscript 1, and author number 2, superscript 2. That one, when you go further down in that title page, will be indicated against the affiliation of that first author. So if author number 1 has 2 affiliations, and the first author is Jane Joseph, you're going to see that after Jane Joseph, there's going to be superscript 1, 2. And then if the second author has 1 affiliation and his name is Joseph Paul, then you're going to see a superscript 3. After listing the authors, the next thing is the list of affiliations, where you are going to indicate 1, the affiliation 1. What does 1 mean? What is the affiliation? What is the primary affiliation of the first author? That could be Department of Geology, University of Jos, Plateau State. And his second affiliation could be in another institution outside his institution. His secondary affiliation could be somewhere in the UK, in the US, Australia. That department is indicated against 2, which is the second affiliation. So you're going to have list of authors, list of affiliations. And then usually also on that same page of list of affiliations, like I said earlier, the corresponding author provides his details. Usually, bullet point number 1, 2, 3 constitutes the title page almost always, not always, but almost always. Then the second page, you're going to have your abstract, where you're going to summarize all that has been written in the manuscript. Oftentimes it's structured, other times it's not structured, it's unstructured. And after the abstract, you have keywords. All of those are indicated in the author guideline. After the abstract, the next thing is the body of the manuscript itself that will indicate the components. So you're going to have either is said to be introduction or background, where the authors are going to provide information about what is known, starting from that point, what is known, the statement of problem, the justification, and then they go on to end it with the objectives, the aim, objectives, as the case may be. So be careful to follow the author guideline. If it says that the body of manuscript should begin with introduction, do not write background. Do not mix them up. If they say it's background, write it as background and not introduction. In some journals, you see methodology. Others, you see methods. Others, you see materials and methods. Like I said, if you follow the author guidelines of the target journal, it will spell out exactly how these components, these titular headings, are meant to be written. And this is where you describe what the authors have done when conducting this research. That's the how of the research, how it was conducted. And then the next section will be the results. Then you find conclusion. Some you might see conclusion, recommendation together. Others might split them apart. And the last part of it is usually references. And there's going to be an indication what type of references. The author guideline will tell you whether it is Vancouver type of referencing or is Harvard. There are many types, even subtypes of these. There are examples provided on how you can do this referencing, whether it is a book, whether it is an online journal. All of those details and examples are usually provided in the author guideline. Please do not make a mistake to write a manuscript without reading the author guideline. It's important. The reason is this: usually when you submit a journal, when you submit a manuscript to a target journal, for many journals, the turnaround time for the editorial group to review and tell you that, okay, we're going to send it to reviewers, usually it's between 5 and 7 days. And so this is what the editorial team we're going to be doing. They're going to be searching if you complied with the author guidelines. If you didn't, they are going to get back to you and say, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Follow the author guidelines. And then not until you get it right, then they will write back to you and say, yes, you have it right. We're going to then send your manuscript to editors to reviewers to review. If your manuscript does not meet the journal criteria, they're going to tell you at that point, unfortunately, you have written a very nice piece of manuscript, but we're not going to send it to reviewers. Most times it happens. Don't be frustrated. When you keep searching, you're going to find the right journal that the scope, that your manuscript fits their scope. When that happens, don't be frustrated. It happens a lot. But then if you read the author guideline, you read the scope of the journal, you're going to know, even from the beginning, that this manuscript you're writing fits the scope of the journal. Otherwise, then you're making a mistake. It's like placing the cart before the horse. That is, writing a manuscript before reading the author guideline. That is a very bad behavior in writing, in scientific writing. And the next part here, which is the last part, because we've just had 15 minutes, is publisher expectations. I've spoken to most of these already. And I used original research articles as an example. The key thing here is being familiar with the author guidelines. The next thing is the scope. The cover letter. You're expected to write a cover letter where you're going to explain the research you did, its main findings, and that all the authors have read and agreed and approved the final version of the manuscript, and that the manuscript has not been submitted elsewhere. For some of us who may want to gamble and submit a manuscript to 2 journals at the same time, it is bad behavior. It is not nice to do that. And so your cover letter indicates that it's not been submitted elsewhere. Some of them will even ask you, has it been presented in a conference? All those information you provide in a cover letter addressed to the editor of the journal with the date, and they're going to sign on it. It is also important for you to familiarize yourself by reading articles published in the target journal, your own target journal of choice. Read articles that have been published there. You get familiar with how other authors have followed the author guidelines and have made it through, and their manuscripts have been accepted and published. So this is some sort of apprenticeship where you learn from those who have published in that journal that is your target journal. The author guidelines will also specify tables and table legend, whether the tables can be part of the manuscript or they have to be uploaded as separate files, or you have to put them at the end of the manuscript, usually after references. All those information are provided in the author guidelines, and that is also applicable to figures and figure legend.